Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. This will be the 6th episode so far. We're coming to the tail end of the second week, and as you can see today, we're back in our normal studios here in the Text Messages studios located in Elk River, Minnesota. Yeah, it was just a good experience to get out there and to try to, more of a dry run, trying to get some idea of what sponsors are looking for, and just a nice practice run. Because I mean, obviously, without once we get good times, balls deep, filming on a regular basis, obviously that bias probably won't even need to go and find sponsorships, because I'm sure once people actually start watching Good Times Balls Deep and it becomes available online somewhere, then I mean, they're probably going to come knocking on our door, banging down the door, just trying to, get a partnership or get involved, or they might want to add new shows to the network or the channel. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a 360 win all around for everybody, for making Minnesota great again, making America great again. Just all good old fun, bringing fun back to online internet podcasting or whatever. So anyways, today I wanted to discuss a little bit, maintaining the theme, the spring theme. I was going to talk a little bit about canoeing today. Canoeing is one of them activities where it's, you still need to have the canoe, and you still need to, find a spot on your rafters or somewhere around your garage, or maybe set it on some blocks in your yard or something like that. But the nice thing about a canoe is you don't need a trailer to haul it around, and it doesn't have a motor or any kind of propeller on it, so you don't have to change the oil on the gas or change this fluid or that fluid, or get some weeds out of the propeller or fan blades and all that stuff that's involved with a regular boat. And then of course the regular boat too, you need to have the trailer with it, and then with the trailer you got to do all the maintenance on the trailer as well. Changing the tires, packing the bearings, and just then the bearings got to be marine grade, and you pretty much got to do that annually. And if you don't do that, you'll be one of those guys that's on the side of the road with a a bad trailer that may potentially cause accidents and things like that. So the old adage goes, for a boat owner, the two best days are the first day you buy it, the last day you have it. But with a canoe, you can basically just buy it, stick it in your rafter. I mean, maybe you canoe one time in your life and then you just stick it in your rafters and forget about it. As long as it's out of your way, out of sight, out of mind, not a big deal. But I mean, a boat, you're going to have this rusty trailer. After a few years, they all get pretty rusty. And you'll probably have it parked on the side of your house. The neighbors will complain, they'll call, you'll get notices, blight notices and fines and all that stuff too. And then when you try to sell it, nobody will want to buy it, so you have to try to give it away for free, and nobody will want to give it away. So then if it's a fiberglass boat, then you'll have to pay a bunch of money to get rid of it. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a hassle. That's why it's best to stick with canoes here. Now there's different types of canoes you can have too. There's aluminum, fiberglass, there's even wooden ones that you can build yourself. You make all the strips of wood and then you fold them around some template and glue them or something and put a bunch of fiberglass around them. So that's another viable option that I think a lot of people with maybe not a lot, but people with a lot of time on their hand may want to consider doing that option. If you got a nice big garage or a shop or any kind of workplace, it's a wonderful experience, and then you get the whole well-being, the feeling of accomplishment, of achievement. Every time you use a thing, you can always think, oh yeah, I built this with my own bare hands and everything too. But I suppose then if it sinks, then it's kind of, it's go back to the drawing board and make another one. That's get back on the horse and giddy up. So ultimately, you can have aluminum, fiberglass, titanium, graphene, wooden one, but you name it, they probably got it available. And you can also get kayaks and sailboats and catamarans and things like that. So the aluminum ones are usually the lightest ones, and they're obviously easy to get rid of because if you have a like a fiberglass boat, like I was talking about earlier, those are very if you want to throw them away, you got to pay a bunch of money. And same with the fiberglass canoe. I mean, a canoe has a little more. Canoes haven't really changed significantly in the last couple thousand years. So I mean, if you got an old fiberglass canoe and you want to sell it, it's going to be a lot easier than selling some old rusted out boat where the engine doesn't work and there's mold everywhere. So that's another thing too. Aluminum, but aluminum canoe is a lot lighter than a fiberglass one. So it's a lot easier to maneuver, to stick on your car or stick in the back of your pickup. And that's the other thing too with canoes. I mean, you can just have a regular 2-door car, 4-door car with the little roof racks on. If you're a big time biker, you probably got them on already. And then, just toss the canoe on there, get a few of those straps, strap it down. There's usually, underneath the front and the back of the car, there's usually spots that are used for flatbed hauling. Or train, like when the car is first manufactured, they'll stick it on container ship, a train, one of those those semi 18-wheelers with all the cars in the back, and they need to be able to have something to secure the car to the body of the particular shipping apparatus that's being used. So there's usually some little hooks on the bottom of the car for that, or little circles or loops or things like that. So most every car should have something like that you can run straps over and then secure it to the roof of the car. And then front and back, and there might be some along the side too, but then you won't be able to open up your doors, so it's a bit of a hassle to fasten it on that location. But if the roof rack is secured enough, you can fasten it around the roof rack too. So that's definitely another way you can go too. But yeah, I mean that's the nice thing about canoes. You don't need a trailer. You can just have a regular car to haul them around. Like you see these people that haul their mattresses. Like when during college move in or move out, you always see these mattresses on the side of the road, or people driving with mattresses on the top of their car. I mean, you can do a similar. That's pretty much what you can do with a canoe. I mean, obviously you want to have it safely affixed, because if you have a flying canoe, it's going to be very dangerous for the other motorists, and you probably get big fines, and you might get beat up in a road rage incident. Just stuff that you likely want to avoid. And then there's another option too. If you got a short box or long box pickup, you can I don't know if you can actually buy one, but you can build some type of little extension rod that hooks up into the receiver hitch, and you just put that little needle in there that holds it into place, and then just have it extend out 4, 6, 8 feet or whatever, so then it holds the canoe. And you can just slide the canoe onto the back of the pickup and put a few straps in there, and then you're pretty much good to go. So it's real easy to haul, which I think is one of the biggest selling points of the canoe too. I mean, it's really narrow, so it's more narrow than a car and a pickup, so it can easily fit on top and within the box of the pickup. And as opposed to a boat or a catamaran, they're very wide objects. You need to have a trailer for them and all that. So it's just, when you're buying a boat at first, it's or a pontoon, it seems like it's all fun and games and everyone's happy, but then when it just sits around for a while and you get busy, or you have to go work in Ethiopia or something like that, then it just sits around all the time, and then you're trying to raise a family, so you got to work all the time and spend all your time buying stuff for them. Then it's very difficult to engage in aquatic activities, so we can call them. But ultimately with a canoe, you do have to get the thing licensed and permits every couple of years, or so. I don't know if it's every 3 years, or it's probably different in other states. So there is that you have to keep up with. So if one summer you all of a sudden just decide, I want to go paddle around a canoe in some random pond, then you're gonna have to make sure the thing is licensed and it's got up-to-date tabs, or whatever they call them for canoes. There's a little sticker on the side that'll have a color and a year inside of it, so just make sure that that's up to date too before you decide to go ahead and travel and utilize it. And with canoes, there's a lot of options too. It's very easy to load and unload a canoe at pretty much any landing. I mean, you don't have to back a trailer or nothing like that, you know, just two people take the canoe off the car, even one person if it's a light enough canoe and the gentleman or lady are very strong people. So then you just toss it in the river, lake, pond, and get your little oars and hop in and start paddling. Very simple. No motors involved, no moving parts are involved. It's just you, the canoe, the water, and hopefully good weather. And what I found too, if you're not in very good shape or you're lazy or you don't, with canoeing you will use a lot of muscles you're not used to using. I mean, you got that whole back and forth rowing, which is a very, it's not really a natural activity or natural movement that people do on a regular basis. Because, you know, if you're running, walking, biking, swimming, you don't really use that back and forth motion. And I guess if you have really good technique, you should be utilizing your legs to some degree when you're canoeing and just trying to get as much muscles as you can involved, because if you're just sitting like a statue and moving your arms, you're going to get extremely fatigued, you're going to get angry and disappointed, and you're probably going to start yelling at the other person you're with, or you might start drinking a lot of alcohol and then just cause a bad experience for everybody. So try to, you know, maybe even go on YouTube and watch some videos and just see proper rowing technique. I mean, it sounds silly. I mean, it's like, well, you grab an oar and you start moving it in the water. It can't be that hard. But I mean, there are, especially if you haven't really rowed at all in your entire life, then you're not going to have any of the neural pathways to efficiently do it. You're going to have to consciously make sure you're doing good technique. You know, same with swimming and rock climbing and things like that too. So you want to get as much of your entire body as you can. Now, yeah, it's taxing on your heart and cardiovascular system too, but when you're using all those systems, you're balancing all the heat distribution in your body. You're balancing all the, you know, the neural pathways and where they're all supposed to go. Then it's just, you're going to be able to do it longer, and it's going to be more fun and enjoyable, and you're not going to get weird sore muscles or a pulled back, or, well, I mean, you might, but you probably will if you're older and not in very good shape at all. But you minimize the probability of that happening if you're utilizing full body technique, efficient technique too. And, you know, it takes practice. You got to think about it too. I mean, if you're out canoeing for the first time, you know, you're with a couple of your bros, you know, two of the people are paddling and a couple are sitting in the middle, and you're talking about going to college or some type of party you went to, or if you went to a dirt track race and you're just having a good time, just talk water cooler talk or campfire talk. You're probably not going to be thinking too much about your technique, so it's just, it's a good idea to practice it by yourself, to just try to consciously establish those pathways. I mean, if you go to a gym, they got these rowing machines, and that you know, the ones that actually slide back and forth, those ones probably would be somewhat helpful. But I mean, of course, it's a simulation, so it's not consistent with reality. Like a treadmill, for example. I mean, you're running, yes, but when your front foot hits the ground and it pushes you back, rather than pushing you back when you're running in reality, you have to pull yourself forward. So there are those nuances too, but it's certainly practicing with a rowing machine is certainly better than nothing. And that doesn't mean you got to practice, you know, 10 hours a day for 3 months before you can hop on a canoe and get paddling. So, you know, I mean, obviously I'm not in very good physical conditioning, but, you know, I think I could probably just hop on a canoe and start paddling and be reasonably comfortable doing it. I mean, it's not like we're trying to qualify for some Olympic time trials or nothing, you know, just, if you got a few people out there, you can kind of alternate and stuff too. If somebody gets tired or mad, or if they fall into the water and get really cold and agitated and don't want to, well, then it probably would be, if you get really cold, it's probably better to be one of the paddlers, because then you can raise your body temperature. So ultimately, the easiest thing to paddle on is downstream on a river. So, what we used to do back in the good old days is in Cold Spring, we would load up the canoe, or we would unload the canoe, and then we'd get into the Sauk River, and then we'd just take it all the way down to Rockville or St. Cloud or whatever, and then we just unload it somewhere. I mean, it's basically, The only since you had the downstream pushing you, propelling you forward, you didn't really have to paddle with strength. You just had to point the canoe in the right direction and not try to bottom it out. So it's very, very, very simple, really. Very fun too. Good experience. You just get to be out. It's kind of one of those all day endeavors. You wake up a little earlier than normal, and then strap the canoe down, put on your little shorts and tank top or whatever, just have a swim trunks or something, and then just get out there and get out to the unloading dock and just stick it in the water and hop on and just pretty much strap in for the ride. Just make sure you don't avoid rocks, basically. That's more or less the biggest thing. And most canoes are pretty durable too, so you can take a few rocks here and there and that should be fine. I'm sure I've hit plenty of rocks in my days canoeing around, and no problem, no big deal, no harm, no foul. And then, lakes and ponds, they're pretty easy to paddle around too. Once you get the thing going, it moves very efficiently. That's why water transport is so efficient, and you can have these giant container ships carrying billions of pounds of stuff from China or food or cheaply manufactured goods, because the ships are very efficient at moving through the water. And of course that's your only option too, so that's another thing to consider. And then the best time of the year to canoe on a river is probably spring, probably midsummer, because then the water level is still fairly high. If you want to canoe in late summer or early fall, when it's still really warm out and it hasn't rained much, the water level is going to be pretty low. So there's a good chance you're going to bottom it out a lot, and there might even be places where you need to actually walk the canoe. You might have to walk it long distances too, which is a complete hassle. So if earlier in the spring, early summer, the water is going to be higher, the current is going to be faster too, so that makes it a little bit more difficult trying to avoid rocks and other obstacles. But as far as your personal exertion and effort put into rowing, it minimizes that significantly. So there's also that factor to consider too. So yeah, it looks like we're hitting a break here. There is more I'll get into depth with the canoeing here. So ultimately, you can buy a canoe, stick it on your rafter. Just get a used one. A canoe doesn't really change significantly over time. You don't need to go to Big Joe Rosso's Sporting Goods and buy a brand new canoe for, I don't even know how much they got. I haven't even needed we probably bought one 20 years ago and we got the same one. So you don't really need to buy them unless you're rolling them around or hitting rocks all the time, or maybe if you go in the boundary waters and you're just knocking into every boulder and obstacle in the sight, then you're probably going to need one at some point. But otherwise, just try to find a use. And it's one of those items too where, it's a bigger item, so once people want to get rid of it, they're a little bit more motivated to. It's not like a boat where people are completely out of control, desperate to get rid of it. But a canoe is something where, if somebody wants extra space in the rafters of their garage, and they haven't used a canoe for a while, they want to get rid of that too, or things change in their life. Maybe they get like a shoulder injury or back injury and they can't even canoe anymore. Then, motivated sellers there, so obviously that, they'd be happy for you to get the canoe off their hand, and then you'd be happy with the canoe for a fair price. That probably wasn't used very often too, if the particular lady or gentleman that owned it had some type of debilitating injury. So, then if you got a small pickup, you can even make a trailer for your canoe if you really want to, or use a trailer. If you already got one of those 4x8 trailers don't really work very well with canoes unless you got one designated for it, and then you kind of come up with the whole boat thing where you got to store a trailer and all that junk. So you're better off if you got like one of those station wagon cars where you can stick it on the roof, or even pretty much any car you can stick it on the roof. They're not very. Some of the heavier duty fiberglass ones are pretty heavy. The aluminum canoes are a little lighter, so maybe you can consider that instead. Plus, the canoes the aluminum ones, they'll probably bend, and I don't know if they are any stronger than the fiberglass ones. I've only had a fiberglass one, so So yeah, it's totally, if you're anything like me, you basically get what's available at the right price at the right time, and that's kind of how it goes there. So yeah, looks like we're at a break here, but and probably sometime in the I was checking out the Good Times Balls Deep studio, and it just looks, it looks like it's first class. So I think once the show hits the air, it's gonna be, it's probably gonna be running on 8 cylinders right away. It's just gonna be a great show. I think you guys will really like it. I'm totally exhilarated about it. I'll probably, I might just walk over there with my camera, drive over there with my camera someday, and maybe film some promo shows or preview shows, or hell, maybe just start filming show up one day and start filming the damn show and seeing what happens there. So yeah, ultimately it will be coming in the very near future. I'm more than pumped. I probably haven't really. In fact, you're probably getting me sick of saying that at this point, but it's reality. I'm not exaggerating anything here. It's pretty much consistent with my thoughts and beliefs. So with that said, you're listening to Text Messages with your parasite Rick Tex. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Text Messages. You're listening to Rick Tex, the parasite of the show. Today is March 17th, 2018, and looks like it's about upper 40s outside today, so that's pretty nice. There's still plenty of snow on the ground, plenty of frozen precipitation. So once that clears up, then we can really start ratcheting up the spring activities, getting gardens in store and getting the plants back outside and just enjoying the nice weather again. So the producers reminded me to attempt to mitigate the dumbing down of the viewers. So we have a few more studies here, it looks like, and this is the same piece of paper that I've had since the start of the show. And if you're thinking about how to conserve paper and resources, usually what I do is I'll take one piece of notebook paper and the first time through I'll write with a pencil on it. You know, you can try to write lightly with a pencil if you really want to, but write everything down with a pencil. Then, you can even do this with a notebook too, you know. Go through the entire notebook, write everything down with pencil. And then the second time through, you know, the notebook will be older, it'll be a little worn out, and then you write everything down with a pen. It'll be legible, and then you'll get to use it 2 times. Now, notebooks are pretty cheap, and if you buy them the end of summer, you know, right before school starts, you know, elementary, high school, middle school, college, all that good fun stuff, then the notebooks are very, very cheap. So obviously, if you do have a type of career, or if you're into hobbies, or if you're documenting your food intake, then you will want to have a lot of notebooks on hand. So yeah, during, you know, early summer, just buy as many notebooks as you can. And then, you know, if you really want to be cheap, you can also dumpster dive at the end of May, you know, when school is out. You know, just go buy some dumpster in elementary school and then just start diving and yanking out notebooks. You know, I mean, I'm certainly not above doing that, and I imagine a lot of other people that like saving money might be willing to do that too. And you can also drive around maybe if you want to drive around by college area and hit up all those dumpsters too, then you might get some cool furniture, mountain bike out of the deal too. You know, I mean, I suppose the hard part about furniture is it's difficult to clean it, so yeah, if you want to get old furniture and used furniture from college places, then by all means go ahead and do that. But pretty much nowadays, though, you can go on Craigslist and there's furniture of all type available. You know, in my house here, just about all the furniture I got was for free. I got a recliner for free. I got the pulpit here was free. I got a weight bench over here that was free. A stool the stool was a couple bucks at a garage sale. And then a kitchen table, that was free. The elliptical was free. The inversion table, I had to buy that for $100 or whatever. So I actually had to spend money on that. That was a little depressing. But you know, a TV was free. Microwave was free, stove was free, fridge was free. You know, it's all about being a parasite. You know, that's what I've pretty much been for a while. I've gotten really good at it. You know, if you want to get free stuff, it's out there. And sometimes, though, the reality is, if you are involved with getting free stuff on Craigslist, if it's actually a good quality product that you're not really sure if you really need it or not, and you try to pick it up, chances are pretty good somebody else is going to get there before you, or there's going to be something funny with it. Maybe it won't work as properly, or maybe one of the tables will be broke and you got to glue it up and try to fix it, and then it'll never really quite look like a finished product. It'll always look a little dingy, and something about it won't seem right. So yeah, most of the times people you know are, if they actually live in a nice house and want nice things, then they want to get rid of their old junk. You know, like I got a chair from some guy who lives in a super nice house, and you know, he didn't want that crap laying around his house. But you know, in my house, it's a perfect fit. And you know, I've probably logged thousands of hours on that chair, and I got it for absolutely nothing. So it's the use to dollar ratio there is just, well, I mean, it's literally infinity because I didn't get it for anything. But say theoretically I did get it for a penny, then it would still be really, really high, the usage to dollar amount spent. So I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want to save money, just look for free stuff, and you got to be patient too. I mean, I had when I first lived here for a few months, I just had one of those little, you know, beer fridges. And you know, I could have went and bought a fridge for $500 and tried to haul it in and everything, but ultimately, you know, I was just patient about it. And then eventually, my brother, he bought these new fancy stainless steel fridge with the blue LED lights, and you know, this is stuff that looks really, really fancy and beautiful. And if you got a nice house to fit that type of apparatus, then by all means, it's a good idea to buy it. You know, it'll raise your resale value. You'll feel more comfortable in your home. It'll look better. It's probably a quieter running fridge, and maybe it's more efficient and cools efficiently. It's got the little containers for fruit and vegetables because they add or lower humidity or something like that. And then the freezer is the temperature controlled, or it's controlled at a certain temperature within a very small tolerance. It just has a lot of good features. And then, you know, the old fridge, it cools food, it freezes food, so that's pretty much all I was looking for. I mean, that's what my requirements were. Does this fridge work? Will it be really loud? And just basic things like that. So, yeah, I got a free fridge out of the deal. He got a really nice one. It was just a 360 win. You know what, the water softener I got too, I bought a water softener, and it only maxes out at about 90 grains per hardness. And if I got the thing pegged, the water is still, it's still probably harder than city water. So it's going to be one of those things where I probably should replace it with a better one, that a water softener that can handle a higher grain hardness, like 120 instead of 90. I mean, I don't know what the units are, hardness per milligram or something. I mean, I really have no idea. But then I kind of put out some feelers, because I mean, the new water softener is probably $500, so it's probably a good idea to put out some feelers and say, hey, if I get a new water softener, do you want to take the old one, or see if anybody wants the old one for free, and just try to do something like that too, because I mean, otherwise it seems silly just to throw away a perfectly good water softener because you were too stupid to realize that you had well water that's really hard, and that the water softener you got wasn't able to handle it. So ultimately, even toilets too. I mean, I always get free toilet. I don't think I've ever. Well, I did buy a toilet a long time ago, but I mean, now it's just get free ones. They're available. Bleach them. They're as good as new. Some of the seals you might have to replace the seal, or replace the internal apparatus inside the tank that flushes it and everything too. But for the most part, there isn't much to them. In fact, it is kind of disappointing how little there is to toilets, and it does get kind of annoying sometimes when they still leak and don't flush properly, and they've been around for hundreds of years. So you do have to deal with that occasionally, which, yeah, it's definitely a bit of a hassle. But I mean, even the super expensive toilets, they don't always flush either. Last house when I was some vagabond living in a basement at this guy's house, we had this fancy dual flush toilet, and you kind of had to stand there just to make sure the thing would, finish filling up the tank and not fill it to perpetuity, so that the well kept coming on and just being a big hassle and all that stuff too. So just because something is more expensive doesn't necessarily mean it's of higher quality. That's sort of the philosophy I always take with auto parts too. Price doesn't always correlate with quality, and generally I try to get locally made parts if possible. But if you're buying bearings, for example, and there's 5 different kinds of bearings, and how are you supposed to know the quality difference? I mean, yeah, you can kind of look at them and poke around and stuff too, but it's just, I mean, some companies are just preying off of you because you think that if it's the highest priced and it's something like a bearing, it's got to be the best, right? But there are also reputable companies like Timken Bearing or Duralast, just companies that want to have a good brand name. I mean, if there's a company, Big Joe's Big Value, and they're way cheaper than the other bearings, I mean, if it's locally made in Minnesota, then I'd probably give it a shot. But I mean, there's some random new company in India that's just... See, the other thing too is a lot of parts nowadays are made in the same factory, and then they just give them different names. So Big Joe's Big Value might be the same as Duralast, but just because they're the same factory doesn't mean they're the same part. I mean, they may or may not be, because Duralast might say, change the tooling on the assembly line and put this type of quality bearings in and that type of quality. So even though they're made in the same factory, they're not quite the exact same. I mean, similar, but just not exactly. It's more or less what I'm trying to imply here. So yeah, ultimately, price doesn't necessarily correlate with quality. And too, that nowadays when you got online reviews for everything, I mean, you can easily go, all right, I got a Honda Accord, and I want the front wheel bearing is starting to sound like a helicopter, and I got to replace it. So you'll see that you got Timken, Duralast, Big Joe's, Big Value. So you'll go on AutoZone or O'Reilly Auto Parts or Advanced Auto or something and check out the reviews, or just go on Car Forum. If you're part of a Honda Accord Car Forum, just go on the Car Forum and say, hey, who's tried out Timken bearings or Duralast and how do they last? Because if there's just a couple people that tried out a certain bearing and it fails after a year, that's probably a good idea to avoid that one. Because number one, it's you gotta have a weekend to install it and take out the old bearing. And if generally things don't always go as planned. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. More times than not, they probably don't, because when you take apart an old car, there's going to be a lot of things that break, and not a lot of things, but I mean, there will be things that break occasionally, like you might strip a bolt or bust a seal or something, and then you'll have to buy a part, and then it'll be, you have to order it from Rock Auto, or they'll have to order it at AutoZone or something, so then you'll have to wait 3 or 4 days, so then you're just like, well, gotta keep the car on the jack inside the garage for the week, and then drive my girlfriend's, smart car, electric convertible or something for the week, or Volkswagen Beetle or a Mini Cooper or something like that. So yeah, you can always over prepare too. Just buy all the parts you think you're gonna need. Just buy seals or bolts. Maybe you think you'll need a lower ball joint or something, or the upper control arm or lower control arm. So obviously you don't want to spend thousands of dollars for something that should only cost a couple $100, but yeah, try to be cognizant of the fact that you might need to have extra parts too. And you can always return parts too. As long as you don't use them and install them. If you buy a couple of seals and bearings that you find out you don't need, and you can just bring them back to AutoZone, no problem. They'll give you them, as long as they can put them back on the shelf, then they can just give you the money back and stuff too. So it's not try to spend as minimum as you can and get by with the little parts and then put dangerous, unsafe parts on the car too. That's definitely something you want to avoid, because in the long run it will cost a lot of money, especially if something tragic happens. So you want to make sure you're putting quality, nice parts back on that are going to work. That doesn't necessarily mean if you take out an axle and it looks old that you should just replace it because it's old. A CV axle, those things can last 20, 30 years. And hell, sometimes if you put in a new one, it's worse than the old one. Like, I changed the rear brake pads on my car, and it's just, the old brake pads were just fine, but since I already tore everything apart and I already got in there, it's like, well, I may as well change them. Now after I changed them, I didn't quite bleed the rear brakes properly, so they make some annoying sound every time I'm driving, so now eventually I'm going to have to re-bleed them again, and then that might not even fix the problem. So I basically took something that was perfectly well and made it worse. Just because I thought that, I've had these rear brake shoes laying around for 10 years, I may as well just install them, because I'm going to rotate the tires anyways or something. So I went ahead and I did that, and yeah, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I did it, so I'm going to have to fix it at some point, hopefully when it warms up, because I certainly didn't want to be outside or laying on a concrete floor when it was 20 below out. Plus there's other issues to address under those conditions. So yeah, ultimately it looks like we're getting up to another break here, but I'll try to get to some of these studies the next segment. So got a little caught up on a tangent there, but it was an important tangent too. Just if you want to conserve paper, first you write pencil, then you go through it all again with a pen. Hey, you can maybe change up the colors too. Maybe you got a pink pencil, so you write a pink pencil all the way through, and you go through with the normal pencil, the graphite ones or whatever, and then you go through with maybe a lighter colored pen, a blue maybe a red, then you go through it again with a black. So you could technically use one notebook 4 times just for writing. This is for scratch paper too. The old information you don't care about, it's just stuff you're writing down, maybe a shopping list, or you're reading some news articles and you want to try to take some notes down so you actually know what the hell you're talking about, where you're going to stand in front of a camera and say stuff. Or if you got to write down something about your car and you're doing some research about your car and the steps to change a brake pad or something, then you want to write it down, and then you don't care after you've done the job and it's done, then it doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, just throwaway stuff. You know, it'll save paper, it'll save the environment. You won't need to cut down all these big beautiful trees that give us all the oxygen that we love to breathe and that we need to breathe every day. And then of course, if you're printing paper too, what I usually do with printer paper is I'll print it, you know, front and back obviously. I'll print it with a lighter, smaller font, like maybe size 10, and I forget what the lightness ratings are, but it'll be a lighter color. Color you can still read, or a shade that you can still read and see fine. You know, you don't need the Hubble telescope to be able to read it. Just your eyes and your regular visual cortex and your eyes that shine light and then bounces off, and then you can read it. So just something that's fairly light. And then after you've done all that and you've printed all those pieces of paper out, you can go ahead and reuse the paper and then just set it to a darker, bigger font. Then you can just print over the same stuff before. But you do run a little bit of risk doing that, because if you print a bunch of paper using the same shade as you used previously, then you're going to make it completely illegible and you just wasted a bunch of ink. And I guess you just wasted a bunch of ink really. And ink is pretty expensive. Ink is where the printer companies really truly make their money. So it's something that you don't want to waste either. And if you do refill the ink, make sure that people refilling it know what the hell they're doing, and change the computer chip in it too so that it tells the computer that the ink has been refilled. So I think I've probably refilled 2 ink cartridges, and both times that didn't happen. So it's like, well, can't use it anymore, I guess. You know, you got to buy a brand new cartridge for $20 or what have you. But anyways, Good Times Balls Deep will be coming in the very near future. Super pumped, super excited about it. The studio is top notch. It's just that he's just been working hard on that. You know, he's got a family. He's an honest, hardworking, morally upstanding guy. He works multiple jobs. He's a very busy guy. You know, he doesn't just stand around all day, and he doesn't have the time to just randomly make podcasts 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So he's a busy guy. He wants to put all the quality that he can into it and make sure that it doesn't disrespect or insult any of the viewers or disregard the value of their time. So, but I mean, ultimately, yeah. I mean, if I can help him in any way I can, you know, I will try. And obviously, from a creative standpoint, he certainly doesn't need any type of help there from an entertainment or just from talent and skill set. He certainly doesn't need any help from me. So as far as that goes, you know, I'm super pumped about that. You know, be 8 cylinders, firing on all 8 cylinders, and I think you guys will enjoy it. You have every reason to look forward to it. You're listening to Text Messages with Rick Tex. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Glad to be here with you. That's Saturday. We're looking at high 40s for the temperature today in Elk River, Minnesota, which is probably fairly consistent with just central Minnesota in general. And, we do get a little bit of the, I guess you could call it the global warming effect for the metro area. But what I think it is, because if you look at metro area temperatures, they're always a little bit higher than the outskirts, or then a little bit even south of the metro area, like Northfield or the Fairmount or Faribault. Their temperatures are always a little bit lower than the metro area, which doesn't really make much sense, because if they're south, closer to the equator, you'd think that they'd be hotter. But for some reason, I guess with the metro area, when you got all the cars and the lights and the buildings and big city lights, big city nights, everyone having a grand old time, then yeah, the temperatures get a little higher too. But there's also some factors, like, usually the temperatures in the metro area is at an airport, so it might be on some black coated runway that says it's hotter than what it really is. So there's always that too. And then some of the complaints about global warming is just that they think that thermometers are placed in weird spots and they might not be giving accurate or reliable. Obviously the data is reliable and accurate, but it's deceptive in that they're strategically moving thermometers to areas where they know are going to register as hotter, or something along those lines. I haven't really read into it much either, but there's always a lot of chicanery and skullduggery and bamboozling going on in the world. So you always want to be vigilant, keep your eyes open, stay vigilant, as one of the greatest shows on cable television, Conspiracy Theories, used to tell you. So ultimately, tomorrow we're gonna be off. So Tuesday will be the next show. So Sunday is just a great time to sit down, chill out, relax. The NASCAR race looks like it's gonna. I just checked it now. It's probably the most prep work I've done for the show for the entire week. The NASCAR race will be tomorrow, Fontana, California, 2:30 Central Time, 3:30 Eastern Time. So yeah, it'll just be fun. Sit down, relax, watch that. Maybe take a nap halfway through. Me, I'm usually glued to the screen for all the 3 or 4 hours. That's just basically, you can't really. If a bomb exploded outside, maybe I'd go check it out. But for the most part, I'm generally not going to leave the TV as long as NASCAR is on and it's live. Watching repeats from 30 years ago, not a big deal. That's the thing too. NASCAR from 30 years ago hasn't really changed significantly much. The cars look a little different. The cars might have actually been faster back then, because on some of their super speedways, like Daytona and Talladega, they use what I call restrictor plates, so they got smaller. They literally restrict the air going into the engine, so then when there's less air going into the engine, you have to get a proper mixture of air and fuel. So less air means less fuel, less power. That's why when you watch the restrictor plate races like Daytona and Talladega, the cars are bumper to bumper the whole time. It makes for super duper exciting racing. It's fun as hell to watch it. It's just a big crap show, whoever's going to win, but that's what makes it great again. It's like, it's not so much who the best driver is or who has the best car, who has the most money. It's just, there is skill that goes into they call it restrictor plate racing, drafting, all that good fun stuff. See, how drafting works is when you got a car in front and a car behind. The car in front is basically punching a hole through the air, and then as it punches a hole through the air, it's creating a vacuum behind it. So the vacuum behind it is actually pulling on the car in front of it. However, if there's a car behind it, that car takes up the vacuum and it's more or less pushing the car in front of it, and then the car in front of it is cutting a hole in the air. So then the car behind it has less air resistance and it's pushing the car in front of it. So both cars benefit equally from the drafting, and then thus it allows them to go faster. And they have certain gearing too. So with the power, if it was just the engine by it of itself, it probably wouldn't even be able to reach red line in top gear, because it just wouldn't have the power with all the air resistance and the restrictor plate and things like that. So when you get the cars in front of you to cut down on that, then you can really pick up the speeds and get up to where you need to be competitive in the race. So Daytona and Talladega, Daytona's the first race of the year. That one was a month ago. Austin Dillon won that. It was a pretty fun race. And then Talladega's, I don't know exactly when it is, but it's coming up sometime in the near future, hopefully. Tomorrow, Fontana. That's just. I don't want to say it's just your average track, because an average track is still extraordinary, but coming back to the deviations from 30 years ago, because nowadays NASCAR they employ this thing called stage racing, not to be confused with stage diving. But what stage racing is they'll race. Say the race is 500 miles, so if the track is 2.5 miles, it'll be 200 laps. So then they'll cut it down to 80 laps of the first stage, 80 laps or 60 laps. Yeah, probably 80 laps for the first stage, 80 laps for the second stage, 40 laps for the final stage. So then the winner of each stage, or it might even be like top 5. I think I'll just say it's the winner of each stage gets an extra point that they can carry into the final. Well, it's like, you know how in football they got the playoffs, and for some silly reason in NASCAR, during the end of the season there's 10 races where they call them the playoffs, but I don't even know why they call it the playoffs, because there's no playing in NASCAR. It's just, I mean, it'd be better just to call it race-offs, or even pants-offs would be a better name than playoffs for a NASCAR, postseason or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, if they win a stage and just any race over the season, then they get 1 point added to the pants-offs. So then that gives drivers more incentive to be balls to the wall for the whole race, rather than just half-assing it the whole time until the last 5 laps. Then they can really put the pedal down. So stage race means that the drivers are pedal to the metal, running on all 8 cylinders the whole race, basically. Not the whole race, but a greater portion of it. So in my opinion, stage racing is making NASCAR great again. I mean, any gimmick you can inject into a competitive, athletic, or sporting event just makes it pretty much more awesome. And that's the other thing. NASCAR drivers, I mean, yeah, it's a fun sport to watch. It's cool. It's competitive. I'm sure it's difficult to drive a car for 4 hours straight. But I mean, they're just not athletes. I don't get why they need to call them athletes. It's such an insult to football players or hockey players. I mean, guys that get their legs busted, or they're getting concussions every other week or every other month or so, and then some guy that sits in a car is gonna call himself an athlete. I mean, what's next? Poker players are athletes. The container ship operators are athletes. Mattress testers are athletes. I mean, it's just absurd how maybe just people in marketing and NASCAR just have way too much time on their hands, and they come up with all these silly ideas of how they're going to market NASCAR drivers as athletes. They're not athletes. Nobody that watches, I mean, look at me. Nobody's going to look at me and say I'm an athlete. I mean, and that's pretty consistent with the fan base at NASCAR. They just want to sit in the stands, drink alcohol, eat cheese curds, and have a good time. Doesn't matter whether they're athletes or not. When we watch football and we see these guys that are, the top 1% of 1% of athletic prowess, and just guys that literally look like they could jump over a building, I mean, yeah, then you want to see an athletic competition. But when you're watching a race, all the work, I mean, these cars in NASCAR and dirt track racing, A modifieds, B mods, all that stuff, these cars basically have several dozen people working on them. And they just work full time, 40 hours. They probably work 60-hour weeks, because they are so ultra competitive and they want to be the best of the best. But unfortunately, when you get a driver that doesn't like winning, then it's kind of all for naught. But ultimately, the time put into each and every car on the track is just extraordinary. And that's why people are so interested in it, because I mean, everything from just the design of the car, the external appearance, all the sponsors, the paintings and everything too, but you got even the tires. Goodyear puts all kinds of time into the tires. Make sure it's the right hardness, the right compound, and then the teams need to put in the right air pressure and to balance the car properly. And then over the course of the day, the car is going to have different track conditions, changing track conditions. Maybe it goes from a day to a night race. The track will go from being super duper hot and slippery to cold, and just the tires grab it like a cock with those big giant talons. So the teams have to constantly change over the course of the day, and then there's ambient conditions too that influence everything as well. The humidity, the temperatures, wind, if it's coming from weird directions or angles or something. And you know, that's just tires too. I mean, you got suspension. All these cars have adjustable suspension too. So the crew chiefs just have an elaborate notebook. And I'm sure if they do use a notebook, they need to save all the information they had. So you cannot reuse notebooks. You need to, at every track, they probably just got a deluge of information based on every possible external input you can think of. I mean, if there's a solar storm that day, they probably wrote solar storm in Fontana, California when we raced. So we need to, if there's another solar storm next time we come back here, we may need to look at this data here and figure out what's going on. And the suspension is something that drivers need to change over the course of the race. You know, the driver needs to provide the input to the crew chief, and the crew chief can then say, hey, we need to do a half turn on the right rear or a half turn on the left rear or something. And then they need to do that super quick too, because the pit stops need to be less than 15 seconds. They need to change 4 tires, fill up the car with Sunoco race fuel in less than 15 seconds. Otherwise, they'll lose dozens of spots, or yeah, probably 10 spots on the racetrack. So it's something that they just can't afford. They need, in a very, very short amount of time, they need to change all the tires, fill it out with fuel, do any adjustments, and then too, they got these tear-offs on the windshield. They need to tear them off, otherwise the driver won't be able to see. It'll be extremely dangerous. And then they have tape on the front grille that allows air into the radiator. So if they put more tape on, the radiator heats up more, but it also allows for more ground pressure so that they can go into the corners faster and just get around the track faster. But too much tape, the car's going to overheat, the engine's going to lose power, it's going to sputter, and then you're going to end up crying on the way. When you get in the holler to head back home, you're going to be crying and probably need to call your mom up for some solace and comfort. So just, you know, the pit crew, you could probably consider the pit crew athletes. And I'll give them, the pit crew guys are athletes. I'll give them that. The drivers, not so much. Because, I mean, for the pit crew guys to run to the other side of the car, take all these lug nuts out, you know, get the tire out, get a new one on, take it back on, run over to the front, take that one off, put on a new one, get the lug nuts on, in such a short amount of time that you're actually competing against other pit crew members to put it on faster, that's definitely, that you could certainly say that's an athletic endeavor, and it's very challenging too. I mean, if I want to change the back tire on my car, even if I got one of those electric impacts, it's still going to take me probably 5 minutes to change a tire. You know, it's not, and for these guys to change, I mean, yeah, there's more of them. I mean, if it was just one of those guys, it would probably take them a couple of minutes to change all 4 tires on a NASCAR, but to do it in the amount of time they do it in is just very incredible. We're coming to the end of the show, folks. We're going to do more NASCAR discussion. We'll probably do more dirt track racing discussion at some point. Princeton Speedway is going to open, I think their website said 26, or actually they just have a Facebook presence. It said 26 or 27 days or something, so super pumped about that. Of course, springtime is a bit of a crapshoot too, because the weather is a little less predictable, and sometimes you even get snow in the middle of April, and you definitely, and when you do show up in springtime, you definitely want to make sure you got plenty of warm clothes, because it gets pretty cold overnight. And we will, Good Times Balls Deep is coming in the very near future. Super excited about that. I mean, there's no reason not to be. It looks like it'll be a top-notch show. I think it'll definitely make St. Cloud great again. It'll make Minnesota great again. It'll make families great again. It'll make debating, hard-hitting topics great again. And yeah, you know, that's the thing. It'll just be a lot of very productive, unique insight. And, you know, geographically based locally here. So, I mean, you know, somebody's opinion that lives in Newfoundland, that just lives in caves or lives on mountains, I mean, they're obviously going to have a different perspective than if you're in the trenches in the middle of St. Cloud, Minnesota, living life in the fast lane and dealing with everything that goes on there. So for the local viewership, it definitely, and you know, Minnesota is basically a microcosm of America. So, I mean, it's almost, you know, it's the heartland of America. If you were to extrapolate Minnesota out into a person, or extrapolate America out into a person, it's like Iowa and maybe Colorado would be the heart, and then Minnesota would probably be, I suppose that'd probably be more the esophagus or upper respiratory tract. But it's still a very critical part of the country in general, and you know, every state is very critical too, to some extent. You know, maybe Idaho would be the small intestines, and then Florida would be the lower intestinal or upper colon, and then New York would be the lungs, or Maine would be the brain or the brawn, or what have you. Every state has its role in making America great again. A lot of people, sometimes I come into contact with people from Europe, and then they keep calling it the States. And I make sure to tell them, there is one important fact to know about the States. That is, they're united. And I always make sure they're aware that it's not only the States, they're the United States. I think that's very important to reiterate that fact too. And if you're talking to somebody from Canada or Mexico and you're talking about making America great again, and they say, well, I live in Canada or Mexico, and it's like, well, then let's make North America great again. So, I mean, there's always those play on words that you can always consider too when you find yourself in just daily, everyday discussions with other people too. And that doesn't mean you just need to push your opinions in people's faces because you're better than them or whatever. Just be a nice person, be a civil person, be nice to everybody. You never know what they're going through, what circumstances they have. So you just need to be nice to every single person you meet. It might be tough in some instances, but you have to do your best. And you don't necessarily have to be the best of the best, but as long as you're being your best, that's the important thing. And good times, balls deep, it's coming at you. It'll be a good time. And sorry I didn't get in any of these research articles, so I guess this whole episode was just dumbing you down, but maybe tomorrow you can sit around and read a couple books or hang out with your family and friends and just enjoy yourself and get ready for another week of just hitting on 8 cylinders, hitting it hard, hitting it long, hitting it fast, and hitting it relentlessly. I'm the parasite of the show. You're listening to Text Messages. No, I am Rick Text. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.